Hello and happy Wednesday, and welcome to another episode of the Wednesdays with the Doc podcast show. I am your host, Dr. Daphne, and I am joined today by my colleague, Dr. Alonda Alloway, licensed clinical social worker. She's also the owner operator of Loudon Counseling and Coaching, which is where I do some work as a therapist part time. So I am going to again welcome Dr. Alloway and give her a chance to introduce herself and talk a little bit about her expertise and experience in the profession of social work.
Um, so yes, I own and operate Loudon Counseling and Coaching, where I'm one of the therapists there. But before I did that, started my career in social work, I started off working with the homeless and potentially homeless
Oh, wow.
right after I got out of undergrad when I first moved to Northern Virginia. So I did that for a bit. Then I went to Howard for my master's and left there, graduated, and went to New Jersey, where I worked as a school social worker for Newark Public Schools. While in Jersey, I also became an adjunct professor of social work undergrads, and
Okay.
then moved back to Northern Virginia, where I did school social work again, and actually met Dr. King there. We were both school social workers,
Yes.
and then ended up coming into a private practice.
So, this is social work month. And so wanted to make sure that, highlighted social workers that are really making a contribution to the profession, especially in our Northern Virginia area. So just you mentioned going into private practice. Talk a little bit about the decision to go into private practice and what makes Loudon Counseling and Coaching stand out.
Okay, the decision to go into private practice was not linear. I was in Newark working as a school social worker, and I had a colleague who was working towards her licensure. And I remember saying, she was, saying, "Oh, you should do it just in case, you want to do private practice." And I said, "I don't want to listen to people's problems all day in a private setting." And so I kind of like shooed her away. And then maybe like a year later, I said, "You know what? Maybe I won't do school social work for the rest of my life. Maybe I should look into it." And so then I started working towards licensure too. When I came to Virginia, I started continuing working towards my licensure here. And then I was doing both. I decided to open a practice. I had no clue what I was doing, learning as we went, all of us.
Yes.
And we had no clue whatsoever. We got a building, hired people, and we're like, what do we do next? We didn't know. But I ended up leaving the school system and concentrating on private practice only because purely because of the flexibility. I love the autonomy of it, fixing my own schedule and working with the clients that I wanted to work with. Not saying there's a big group of people that I don't want to work with, but I wanted to be able to work with a lot of different type of people. There are many practices in Northern Virginia that don't take insurance. And I wanted to make sure that there was a place where people could go to actually use insurance, because I would be one of those people who need it. And so in coming to the practice, when we hire people, we wanted to always make sure that our clinicians were people who saw the need for seeing people with insurance too. So that's one of the things that stand out. We do accept insurance. We accept a whole lot of different
Yes.
insurance. And, when we go to venues or, setting up booths and stuff, we always have a list out like, yes, we take insurance, and we have the whole list of them. And people always say, "You take insurance? I can't find a place that does," So that is one thing. We also, when we started out, I wanted a place that had more elements than just clinical work. I wanted people to be able to work on their physical health as well as their financial well-being, because when I was mapping out the business plan, I thought about how sometimes when someone's struggling with their mental health, they're not taking care of their physical health at all. So I wanted some stress reducing elements in it, like yoga and things like that. And then I also thought about, well, sometimes people's physical health trigger the mental health issues. And in those two things working together, oftentimes they're not taking care of their financial health either. So I wanted those three elements to come in. And that's what we have at Loudon Counseling and Coaching. So not just mental health services, we do things for physical health. We don't do as what we started off doing, where we had someone doing yoga, and we had a massage therapist in-house, and we have a different structure now, but we still have the financial piece there with like CPA and insurance broker and things like that, and do some collaborations with people on the physical health side.
So really looking at the whole person.
The whole person.
Okay.
Which
And I
social work does.
yes, and I can absolutely is what social work does. And I can attest to individuals seeking services asking about insurance. That is the number one question that I get
Yes.
prospective clients as well.
Oh, yes.
And I like the aspect of you're highlighting that social workers look at the whole person and not just one aspect of a person's life or one aspect of that problem that they may be experiencing, but everything from more of a holistic whole person standpoint. So, for our listeners who may not necessarily be familiar with the profession of social work, or who may actually be, looking for a mental health professional, what does licensure mean, or being licensed mean, and what does it mean to have an LCSW?
Mm, okay. Whew. Well, I think that sometimes the licensure piece confuses some people because there's different names for people who have license and some who don't. I want to also bring in coaching in that aspect as well, right? So some people will look for a therapist or a clinician and not realize that someone who is licensed means that they've done all the required hours, which there are a lot. It's like 3,000 hours or something we have to do, right? We do a lot to become a therapist, right? And that's on top of getting the master's. And then we have a national exam that we have to pass, right? So we have all those elements in place, which says we are independently licensed. We do not have to have a supervisor checking what we do because we got it. That's really what licensure means. So there are people who are under the licensure who haven't received license yet, who are considered like a resident or a supervisor. And so some people will say, I don't want a resident. I don't want a supervisee. They don't know what they're doing. Not necessarily. It just means they have their masters and they're working on those 3,000 hours that we all have to do. And they're working to pass that national exam. So there are people who are residents or supervisees who have been in the field of social work for 10, 20, 30 years. Yes. They just haven't done those steps, and those are the steps that they're working on. And then there are people who consider themselves mental health coaches. Now, the problem with that, now we are Loudon Counseling and Coaching. Our coaching is not mental health coaching. Mental health coaching, I actually have an issue with, because there are people who can consider themselves coaches without any type of regulation, any study, anything. They can just make a business card and say, hey, I'm a coach. I'm a mental health coach. Nobody's checking for that, right? So when we hire coaches in for our practice, we make sure that they're licensed. I'm not licensed. They're certified under whatever it is that they're coaching with. But for someone who has a mental health coach, means that they may not have that master's, which is just the foundation. They definitely don't have those 3,000 hours or whatever your state requires, and they have not passed that exam. So there is no one checking for whatever they may be doing to you, which can be harmful to that client or person. That I can't even say that they're a client because they're not working with a clinician.
So the takeaway is if you are experiencing any type of mental health challenge, diagnosis of a mental illness, you really want to ensure that you're seeing someone who is licensed because they've gone through all of the steps
Mm-hmm.
to ensure one, your safety, and to ensure
Mm,
that they're providing services to you competently and services that match your needs at that time.
exactly.
Okay. That,
Exactly.
that's good to know because I hadn't actually been familiar with the mental health coach aspect. I learned something new today as well. So thank you for sharing that information. And along with what Dr. Alloway said, you also want to make understand that when someone is licensed, that also means that they have to maintain that license every year, and we have to show that we've taken continuing education courses or gone to approved workshops to maintain our license, which means that we're continuously learning about mental health, about diagnoses, about mental illness, about interventions and treatments to support the individuals that we serve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for adding that in. I don't know how I forgot that piece, but yeah.
No, I just went to one. It's on the forefront of my mind right now. So I am sure that you have heard, because there's been so much discussion with the Department of Education
Mm,
trying to reclassify social work as a not professional degree. Now,
mm,
I understand it because of, financial aid and, wanting to manage, how much money borrowers are using or borrowing for their education. But it has so many implications to service delivery, to social work salaries, to already underserved populations. What would you say is the why behind the profession of social work being important?
mm. To me, it's equivalent to education. Education is the foundation of every career there is, right?
That is true.
While social work may not be the foundation of every career, socialization is the foundation of everything.
Absolutely.
And we, as social workers, right? We, as you talked about, the holistic piece of what we bring into the profession, that's social work. Whether we're working in a hospital or a school or a community agency, whatever it is, whatever the environment is for that social worker, the work that they're actually doing is about the socialization of that person.
That is true.
Even if it's private practice or any of these type of places, right? If the socialization is off, that's what we're working with.
That is
People aren't coming to us because everything is fine. Something's not working right in their environment, which is a social environment. If they can't get a job, if they can't maintain relationships, they can't maintain friendships, it all goes back to that foundation of their socialization in which the social workers are helping these people through.
that is true. That is true. And that is a great way, um, one great way to sum it up and to talk about why it's important. Because the reality is that we live in a society with other people. And if we don't know how to get along well with one ourselves, then when you talk about socialization, then it's going to be difficult for us to get along well with others and to maintain all of those aspects of our lives
Mm-hmm.
that creates this whole healthy person.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. Now, I know because we've been colleagues for quite some time,
More time.
I have certain expertise in private practice and with, certain clients. Can you talk a little bit about your area of expertise and why it is important important, or how it connects to the profession of social work?
My expertise. Look, I'll be honest, I hate the word expert.
Stand. Right?
So when people ask me about expertise, I'm like, I don't know. I'm not an expert in anything. But I will say, in private practice, most of the work that I do, um, I would say deals with trauma. Most of my clients are men, believe it or not. Um, when I say I'm a trauma therapist, again, I'm no expert in trauma. I say that because whatever somebody comes in with, whether it's, I'm here for my anxiety symptoms or depression symptoms or grief or whatever they come in with, after we start working together, I always realize there's some unresolved trauma somewhere. So whatever it is, I always say, okay, it's we're working on the trauma.
That is true.
Always. Yeah.
So for you, and I know within the profession of social work, so many different areas, how does that connect back to you, to social work? That work with, trauma, that work with, um, some of those underlying issues that come out with anxiety and grief or what have you. How does that connect back to the profession?
Again, back to that word socialization,
Mhm.
right? When someone has experienced a traumatic event, it often impacts different areas of their life that they may not even recognize that there's a connection, right? Which is why people come in saying, hey, it's anxiety, hey, it's depression, because they haven't made those linkages, right? I keep getting divorced. I can't keep my friends. My family don't talk to me. You know, you peel back the layers,
Yeah,
there's a socialization breakdown somewhere from that trauma with that anxiety, with that depression. So it's all tied into one in some place with the socialization, needing a social worker to help sort that out.
I like how you connected all of that back together. Now, since we are, talking about Social Work Month, or we're focusing the interviews during Social Work Month, what is one thing that you want listeners to know and or understand about the profession of social work?
Oh, a myth. Social workers are broke. So I may be broke right now. However, people automatically think if you go into social work, you will be one of your clients. You won't be able to pay your bills. When I was an adjunct professor at Seton Hall, I had a few students who were, um, their major was social work, or they were trying to be a social work major, who came to me and during office hours crying because their parents were making them change their major because they said if they become a social worker, they'll be poor. So heartbreaking. Seton Hall, I believe it was Seton Hall that did this study. I remember learning about it when I was working at Seton Hall. It was Seton Hall, actually. They did, and I don't know which group it was, but they looked at alumni and they did like a survey of like first year graduates or whatever. And so some of the questions were like, how much money you making? Whatever. Number one was social work. And that's because when we graduate, if you graduate with just a bachelor's in social work, you're already coming in salary wise, not on this first step, because we have to take an internship
Yes.
as in social work students. So when we get out, we already have a year or so of work experience. When we get out with our masters, for both years of our master's program, we have to do an internship in the field. So we graduate with, if you come out with your master's in social work, you at least have 3 years work experience already. So when you graduate, you can't do entry level.
That is true.
So you are making more than whatever these other students who are graduating with initially right off the bat, because you already have that. So I definitely wanted to address that myth that social workers can make good money. I think maybe all the social workers I know make at least around 6 figures. Yeah.
Yep. I'm glad that you pointed that out because I do think that a lot of people who are really called to the profession and really want to do some great work are not coming into the profession because of that myth.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also, entrepreneurial social work, as Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Alloway, is doing by having her own private practice. So there are many ways of using the degree in a way that you can earn money. I can attest to myself. I've within the profession of social work, every job that I've had, I've gotten hired in on the higher pay scale. And it's for the reasons that Dr. Alloway mentioned, having done, practicum, having that multiple years of work experience. I also did something that I know sometimes, and I'm going to say this as a professor at George Mason and working with a lot of students that are currently receiving their MSW. A lot of students are coming in saying that they want to be a therapist when they finish their MSW. Well, what I did, and as you heard Dr. Alloway say earlier, I took a job working in child protective services. Child protective services was not the area of social work that I wanted to practice, but I did it because it gave me some skills that are that have been invaluable to
Mm-hmm.
everything I have done within the profession of social work. And I only worked in child protective services for 3 years. And after that, every job I received, I was hired in on a much higher pay scale. And I think it was because I took a position for a few years to gain a different type of experience that
Mm-hmm.
then was propelled me forward into the rest of the jobs that I ended up getting as a social worker. So also, don't be afraid to do something that's a little bit outside of what you initially think you want to do. It has also helped me, I think, to be a better therapist, having worked in child protective services, because as Dr. Alloway said, we work with a whole person. So
Mm-hmm.
when I'm working with a client, sometimes there are certain things that I hear that come out that for me, I'm able to connect to a few other areas. But had I not had that experience in child protective services, I wouldn't be able to connect dots that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that again has helped me really earn, um, great salaries as a social work professional.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think salaries are an issue, not coming into the profession is not the answer. The answer is to come into the profession and then advocate for higher rates of pay.
Mm-hmm. There you go. There you go.
um,
We advocate for everybody else. We can advocate for ourselves as well.
This is true. We have to advocate for ourselves if we're going to advocate for other people. So, final question. Now, on the podcast, I usually give some kind of a tip or action item for my listeners to engage in that, kind of helps them in their walk. And I do put the disclaimer out there that, me giving tips is not a replacement for therapy. So if you need a therapist, don't say you heard Dr. Alloway and Dr. Daphne, and so you don't need a therapist. Nope, you need a therapist. We're just giving you some things that you can incorporate into your life to help you as you work with your therapist. But what is one tip or one action item that you can give to our listeners to help them manage their mental health, or to help them manage any kind of problem or challenge they are experiencing?
Hmm. One tip. Um, I would say don't use TikTok as your diagnostic tool.
Woo! Say that again for the people in the back.
Please do not use TikTok as your diagnostic tool. I I don't have TikTok, but I've had clients come in um, that I there was one period where I was like, I need to find out about this TikTok. I'm too old to understand what this is. But I had some clients, it was one particular time where it was a few different people who were coming in every time they came in saying they had a new diagnosis. And I'm like, well, who told you that? Well, TikTok said, well, I learned on TikTok. TikTok said, and it would be the most bizarre thing, right? If anyone gets the diagnostic and statistical manual of health,
Woo.
there's so many things that all of us could find ourselves in
Oh,
this book.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I could be 12 things in that book, right? But it doesn't mean that I have that diagnosis. If you see something on TikTok and it says, hey, do you experience this and this and that? Just like when you're watching those commercials and you're like, are you bloated? I got cancer. It's not the
Yeah.
same type of thing. So you can't take any type of social media tool. I don't care what mental health coach there is on TikTok who says, this is now, you are now neurodivergent. It doesn't mean that. So if you do see some similarities of something that they're showing on social media, maybe you should check with a real professional who is licensed to see what they may say about a possible diagnosis.
You know, I do the same thing with my clients when they talk about Googling symptoms. And I'm like, if you Google, you're going to find,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
You're
that
dying tomorrow.
exactly something to support what you're Googling. So I
Oh my.
wholeheartedly appreciate you for saying that. So the takeaway, listeners, is to stop using TikTok. Diagnosis. We do not get a diagnosis from TikTok. Along those same lines, I read an article a few years ago that talked about the fact that if you are going to, kind of follow certain people on, TikTok or Instagram or any other social media platform, and you may be using them for some kind of, inspiration or
Mhm.
information, that you want to make sure that you know what that person's credentials are.
Mhm.
And so, as Dr. Alloway and I have both said on this episode, so when you see the episode uploaded or you see the clips on Instagram, because I'm not on TikTok either, you know that we are credentialed, we are qualified, and we're licensed. We both have an MSW. Both are licensed clinical social workers through our Virginia Board of Social Work. We've both taken that licensing exam. We both go through the continuing education courses to maintain our license. And we both have an advanced degree in another area. I believe Dr. Alloway has a doctorate, a PhD, and I have an EDD in counseling psychology. So you know that we are qualified. And I think that's the difference sometimes when we're on TikTok or any other social media platform getting information from folks that we don't really know, and we don't know what their credentials are. So thank you. Again, the takeaway: no more getting diagnoses or diagnosing ourselves from what we hear on TikTok or any other social media platform. That is why we have licensed professionals.
Exactly.
All right. I want to thank Dr. Alonda for joining us on Wednesdays with the Doc today, for sharing with us during Social Work Month and highlighting the important and invaluable work that we engage in as social workers, as mental health professionals. If you are looking for a mental health professional, please check us out at Loudon Counseling and Coaching. That is the name, that is the website, loudoncounselingandcoaching.com. We are in the Northern Virginia area. Our clinicians are also licensed in other states. We have clinicians that do virtual sessions and that also do in-person sessions. So please check us out. When I share the episode, you'll have all that information to contact us. Thank you again, Dr. Alloway. It has been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, it's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I look forward to us connecting again. Happy Wednesday, everyone, and have a great rest of your week.